Hello and welcome to the webcast for parents of incoming students in the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm Paul Snigowski. I'm a biology professor and dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. And I'm glad to be here with some colleagues from the college office and from the faculty. And together we will answer your questions about your students' experience coming into the college. Before we get to those, a couple of important dates though. First important date and time is this Friday is the deadline for advanced registration for incoming first year students, Friday at midnight. And in order to advance register, your student...
11:59.
11:59, 59. In order... Thank you.
Just it always nice. Well, it kind of gets in people's way if they wait till that.
Yes, we're not suggesting you wait until midnight on Friday. At any rate, in order to advance register, your student needs to have had a conversation with their pre-major advisor. And after they've had that conversation, then holds on their advanced registration will be lifted. So if you think or you know your student has not had that conversation yet, now is a good time to suggest to them that they make an appointment to do that. Second set of dates is November 1st to 3rd, which is Family Weekend. And we certainly hope to see many of you here on campus for Family Weekend. There are a number of events that we always do here on campus, including my favorite, which is the college brunch on Sunday morning, which is a great informal occasion where we just get to talk to everybody, going around to tables and talking to parents and students alike. If you can't make it here for Family Weekend, we will run another webcast right around that time. And so we'll be able to answer more questions you might have after the first, couple months of your students' experience here. Well, without further ado, I'd like to ask my colleagues and friends to introduce themselves to you all, starting on the far right here.
Hello, my name is Eve Trout-Powell, and I am the Christopher H. Brown Professor of History and Africana Studies. I'm a former Associate Dean of Graduate Studies in the School of Arts and Sciences at Penn, and I am a Penn parent, although my student has graduated several years ago.
Hi, I'm Janet Ty. I'm one of those people who's been sending you various and sundry mailings. I am the Dean of First Year Students and the Director of Academic Advising for the College of Arts and Sciences. On a good day, I also get to be a historian of medicine and was lucky enough to be one of the faculty that helped put together the Health and Societies major, which is one of our interesting interdisciplinary approaches to education.
I'm Rebecca Poyero. I'm one of the advisors in the college office. I have a PhD in American Studies and studied social and cultural history, and I'm a full-time advisor here in the college, and I'm looking forward to meeting lots of your students in person, although I've met some of them by phone already.
And Rebecca is going to be handling questions as they come in for us, and she will be the one to bring up our questions as we go along. So I guess we'll get started here so we can start answering questions.
Okay, so one of the dates we didn't talk about was new student orientation. One of the questions is, how long should parents or family members stay in Philadelphia once orientation starts? Will students have spare time between orientation and the start of classes to go around town, hang out with us, etc.? So just to remind you, the official move-in day is Wednesday, August 21st. And there is a family farewell activity in the evening at 5 p.m. Now there may be some students who have an earlier move-in date of August 20th, but the big official one is the 21st. And I guess all activities after that time are really for students only. So family members are encouraged to, if you bring your student to campus, to give them a hug, make sure they're set up, and let go so that they can, start orienting themselves to the other students and to the activities that are provided for them and being at Penn.
And there's a lot of activities. And New Student Orientation is a jam-packed set of activities starting from orientations in the college houses and getting used to life on this campus. And so it isn't as if we are telling you we don't love you, parents. It's just that the students are really going to be busy and they won't have a whole lot of time to fit you in. I also almost can guarantee it's going to be really, really hot. So you might
Almost
not, it
always.
might not be your moment in Philadelphia. Come, another time when it's not quite so beastly hot.
November 1st to 3rd, for
Right.
example.
Can I add one thing to that? As ridiculous as it might sound, since we live in Philadelphia and my oldest son came here to Penn, it was very important for me and my husband to find a little quiet place so he would not see how we were reacting to the fact that our big boy, our baby, was going to college. So I just want to say that we do understand,
Oh, yeah.
often on a very personal level, what a big step this is for your student, your child, who at that moment will just seem like such your child and not your almost grown teenager. We do get that this
Oh,
is a
yeah.
moment for everybody.
It's a huge moment in the life of a family when a child, a guardian, goes off to college. I can't resist a story. When we took my daughter, who's graduated college, to the college she went to, she had been in touch with everybody by social media. And so we're slaving away, moving her stuff in, and we noticed that she's off to the side having this wonderful conversation with a bunch of new friends. And at one point, my wife and I looked at each other and said, well, I guess we're not needed here anymore.
Yeah.
And we said our happy goodbyes and went our way. Now, I'm also the parent of a child who's going off to college this fall, so we'll see how that one goes.
And I don't have any going off to college stories for my kids who are younger, but I still identify with the students coming into college. And I remember going, and my dad, who I love very much, I don't know if he's watching, I don't think he'd be watching this, but wanted to set up the dorm room, and he had ideas about the way it would work, and he was probably very good at it because he and my mom had set up our living situation for years, but it engendered a big fight, and they left, and that was the introduction to college. So there might be fights, there might be conflicts, maybe. I think being ready to let go and let your student make their own mistakes about how to set up their dorm room or whatever is a big part of this. And it's hard on both sides, I'm sure.
Always is.
Right. So you had mentioned that advanced registration ends this Friday. We had someone write in, I don't think my son's done anything yet. What should he do between now and the 19th, which is the end of advanced registration?
Well, you should know that your student has, since the early part of June, been in contact with us, and we've sent them links that tells them who their pre-major advisor is, who their peer advisor is, to our onboarding website, which is called Compass, which is in the learning Canvas system that we use for our classroom, and that goes step by step to get them ready to come to be here. And if they haven't somehow found their way to Compass yet, you might suggest that to them, because they do need to do a few things. And this advanced registration period, which we are in now till Friday, July the 19th, is really important. You get to have a chance to talk to your pre-major advisor, maybe your peer advisor, figure out your first ideas about courses that would be good for you to get transition in, to get your foundations all set up. We've got lots of information, videos, advice from other students that are in Compass. So it's not a hard thing to do, but you do have to do it, because when the system closes on the 19th, it's going to be closed for a week to 10 days. And when it reopens in the latter part of July, we're going to be in real-time registration, in which you'll only be able to register for those courses that still have an open slot.
Right.
And adding and dropping can be, kind of an abrupt way to get used to doing all of this. So I urge everybody to take advance
Yeah.
registration, seriously.
Yeah, and just you learn a lot, and your students should just not fear it, and just get in there and do it. Do
'Cause-
the various tasks that are there. You'll,
But they're straightforward, and,
Yeah.
and we
yeah, it doesn't take a lot of time.
and your fellow students are doing a lot of the instructing in Compass, by
Yeah.
the way. So,
Yeah.
a little 3-minute video on how do you use the registration system.
Yeah.
So here's one that just came in. I'm looking at flying my student home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. How flexible are the instructors if a student has to miss a class to catch a plane?
Can I take a shot at answering
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
I always encourage my students at the beginning of the semester when they're in class with me to take a good hard look at the dates of exams and midterms, not only on my syllabus, but on all of the other syllabi that they have from their other
Mhm,
classes.
mhm.
And then see that, and then figure that out, and then make their plans for Thanksgiving.
Right.
And very often actually, I get requests from students saying, well, I didn't realize or I didn't know it's on the syllabi. All the faculty make sure that that's clear, because we also like to go home for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but I would just say it really just requires sitting down with all of the dates on your syllabus, each one from all your classes, and figuring that out, and then working with your family about that.
And I do know from experience, because I teach as well, that students and families will early in the semester start to make plans for the winter break, for travel for the winter break, and at the end of the spring semester leaving campus. The thing to be aware of there is that there's a final exam schedule that is universal for the university and for the college. And those dates are available from very early in the semester, and you need to take note of those, because there isn't a whole lot of flexibility with those dates. Those are common dates. They're set up in the university system, and so before you book any tickets or make any plans, take a look at when the final exam dates are for the relevant classes. Now, that said, there are instances in which professors are quite flexible about, especially the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I've, for
Yeah.
years, lectured a class that met on the Wednesday afternoon before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And there was a very cozy feeling in the room. Normally there were 200 students there, and on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving there were about 50. And so one year I lectured on the genetics of turkeys, just to make it topical and interesting for the students who were there. So, when in doubt, check with your professor as a student. Just ask. Is there anything serious that's planned for a given day? Just ask. It's a good thing. It's a good practice to get into. Open communication with your professor.
One of the other questions that's related, which is about what to do if you have to miss class, is what should students do if they become sick, and where can they go for help, and who should they inform? So this happens throughout the semester.
Of course.
That's
Of course. Yeah.
So you have paid a student health fee. We have a world-class student health center, which is not very far, right in a full-service center, all kinds of practitioners. If a student is ill, they are a client, they are a patient of the student health center, they should go there. All incoming first-year students mostly are living in college housing, so there will be people on their floor if they would like some assistance, an RA, the house dean, those are people. If they have to miss class, we have a system called Course Absence Report, where you can send through this system a message to your instructor saying, I'm not going to be in class today. This system will make it very clear that it appreciates and it is important for you to tell the instructor this, but this is not an excuse, so to speak, in that if you miss the lecture or you miss something that's going on that day, it will be on you, the student, to go to the instructor to make arrangements to catch up and fill in the pieces that are missed. If you are really concerned about being ill and you're not quite sure what to do, you can call the Student Health Center. They have lots of triage and answering questions. If you call the college office, that's probably where we would send you to get the answers to the questions. But I really cannot speak strongly enough for the Student Health Center because, like Dr. Trout-Powell, I had sons who were students here, and we made very good use of the Student Health
Yeah,
Center, and
yeah.
they were wonderful.
Okay. Here's another question, which is what kinds of support are available for students academically if they need extra help? And there's a lot of different ways one could need extra help in terms of, support with the content of a course or the approach to a course, and also emotional support or social support. So you can take this.
Yeah. Yeah. We can answer this question on a number of dimensions.
Right.
I'll start with the first dimension, which I've already said something about, which is go see your professor. Go see your professor. We're not dragons, we're not angry beasts, we're not going to swallow you alive. We're actually there teaching because we love to teach and we love students. And so and here I will tell a story pre-approved from my daughter's college career, which I have told before. And I'll tell it again, which is that when she was a first-year student at her college, she called my wife and me, and we asked, "How's it going?" "It's going great, except for this one course, and I'm not doing so well." "Have you gone to talk to your professor?" "Oh, well, no, I don't want to seem like I'm a dummy or whatever." And we said, "Well, you dummy, go." We didn't say that, but we felt that. We said,
Thank you.
both of us are professors, and we said, "Go talk to your professor. Your professor wants to hear from you." She did, and it completely turned things around for her. So in many ways, that's your first recourse. If you haven't been going to office hours, if you haven't been making that personal contact, even in a large class, I have taught very large intro bio classes, 200 students. Weeks before the midterm, I have office hours every week. Weeks before the midterm, almost nobody comes to office hours. So it's a great time for a student to come in, get acquainted, ask a few questions, break the ice, feel more personally comfortable with the situation. So that's your first recourse, at your student's first recourse. But I'll leave it to others to...
Well, but to go along with the faculty and the instructors, many courses have graduate students who
Yes.
serve as teaching assistants, and our graduate students are wonderful. They're not quite professors, and they're a little bit closer to the students, and they can be very helpful in solving all kinds of problems. So,
I was actually going to promote
Oh.
the role of the graduate students who are
Love
working
TAs.
as TAs, as teaching assistants, and say that they can be very reliable intermediaries between the students and the faculty. I actually make it a requirement of the students in my classes to come to see me at least twice a semester, and so that the ice is already broken. So that and sometimes, as Paul was saying, that students are scared to come speak to their professor. They're not as scared if they think it's a requirement, but because
Gotta
we
do it.
really do want to get to know the students,
Yeah.
and they're coming to us from all over the world, from all kinds of different experiences, from all kinds of different cultural and social experiences about how do you tell somebody that you are feeling vulnerable or you're really sick. And I want to add, I've had an undergraduate who needed to have 3 surgeries during her freshman year, and it became very, very difficult for her to negotiate the system because she was in pain, she was overwhelmed, without the help of faculty. And so I just want to reiterate what we're all saying is that faculty really do see themselves as the students' advocates. And I also want to add that in all of our departments there are undergraduate coordinators and undergraduate advisors, even if that's not your major. The undergraduate advisor tends to know very well the faculty and how to negotiate the system and how to unite the health services with the requirements of the course. And I think as parents it might be very helpful if you let your students know that this is normal. It's
Yes.
really
Mhm.
normal.
Yeah.
It happens to everybody, and that there's no shame at all in having a difficult time or a difficult semester.
Yeah, and something I make a point of saying in my courses is that the strong student goes for help. The strong student goes for help. That's what a strong student does. We all in our academic careers go to each other for help. When we're having trouble puzzling something out or understanding something, we don't kind of hole up and only think of it solo. We go to each other for help. We ask, you've thought about this, can you help me? I can't quite wrap my head around this. It's a community of learners. Now, more formally, we have centers and resources available for students to go to as well for help. We have a wonderful outfit called the Weingarten Learning Resources Center, which is staffed with professionals in learning. And I've had many students whom I've referred to Weingarten. They get that first midterm grade and it's not what they hoped for. We talk about it a bit. I say, well, you might want to go talk to someone at Weingarten about study strategies, about learning strategies. They are enormously helpful. And there are other resources as well.
So we have a writing center. We have a tutoring center, and the writing center will help with any writing, not just courses that are in the writing program. And they have peer advisors and others. We have a tutoring center, which is content-based and is by peers. That's also connected with the Weingarten Learning Resource Center now, so that's an important resource. We've already mentioned student health, because sometimes, you're having trouble sleeping and it's your ability to concentrate, things like that. We also have an excellent counseling and psychological services center, and that is a center which has helped many students deal with problems like, acute homesick sickness, more serious kinds of things as well, but also just sort of normal developmental, this is like a strange place, I'm having trouble getting used to it, or they can be extremely helpful. You also, as a student in the College of Arts and Sciences, have a home base, which is 120 Cohen Hall, which is the college office. The three of us have our offices there. There's a raft of other staff that are there. We are the place that you should feel comfortable coming to ask any kind of a question, finding any kind of resource that you want to find. That's the whole purpose of why we are there. We also hope to make it easier for you to come there because we almost always have cookies and candy. We have a hypoallergenic dog who visits us on a regular basis. You can come and visit Tango. But think of it as home base, and you should find 120 Cohen Hall early in your career because you never know when you have a kind of question just want to check something out. That's what we're there for.
Yeah.
Just one of our greatest resources are the undergraduates themselves.
Yes.
And there are many peer groups on campus that are usually conducted over the phone. There's perfect anonymity if that's what the student desires, to really talk about different kinds of issues that you might not want to talk to your professor about. I'm thinking of certain issues that come up for the LGBTQ community on campus.
We have a wonderful center there too.
And we have at least 2 undergraduate support groups. I mean, there are undergraduate peer-related support groups all across campus that can be very, very effective.
Yeah. And one final thing to say about your student and other students as they come here is that for many students, perhaps not for all, but for many, forming study groups where they work together is really, really useful. Now, there's a distinction between doing each other's work and studying together that they need to keep clear, and professors are perfectly clear about that. But it's often very useful for them to have a group that they'll sit down and talk about things with, and that's a form of that asking others for help. There's a complementarity there. There might be something one student just understands perfectly, but something else they don't, and vice versa, and they can help each other out and do.
There's one question that just came in, which is related to the support resources, and it is, what are the best ways for families to assess and support the mental and emotional health of our students during their college years? And I mean, we can't speak to that. None of us are therapists, but we can certainly.
Well, first of all, you know your child, and that is important for you to base any kind of judgment you have. I also, one of our colleagues in the medical school, Dr. Tony Rothstein, has recently published a book with another one of his colleagues, Dr. Janet Hibbs, which is called The Stressed Years of Their Lives. And the book itself is to go right to that question. It is about how can you tell, how do I support normal, homesickness or like, the first breakup with an interesting partner or trouble with roommates, that kind of thing, or gee, this is the first time the student has not gotten a good grade and that really rocks them. How do you help them deal with that? Those are what we all like to say are normal things, but they can affect individuals differently. In that book that can help you with that, the book also does talk about how to look for something more serious going on and finding out at your college or university, and Penn has a lot of resources, how do you get help? Who can you talk to about this? How do you get your student to get the help that they need? And I think one of the things that really spoke to me very strongly out of this book is that Dr. Hibbs' own son, this is what spurred her. She's a family therapist and she's like an accomplished, wonderful person. But as circumstances arose, she didn't know what to do. And she put all of this wonderful story out there to help all of us try to figure out how to help students in this era. And it is a different era. All the social media, all the pressure that young people put on themselves. I mean, we live in a very different world than perhaps many of us went to school. So I would say check the book out. I think it has a lot to offer, but there's a lot. Mostly I say know your student, and when in doubt, pick up the phone and ask a question.
Yeah, and I would just add something that is not so much about a student in trouble, but about what certainly I as a parent have tried to do with my children, which is not to press upon them extra expectations as they go off to college. They're expecting plenty of themselves.
Absolutely.
They are expecting the world of themselves as they go off to college. And what I've tried to keep in mind is what they need from me is what all of you are giving your students as well, which is love and support, but not additional expectations.
And from a person who's talked to thousands of students, I want to tell you, your student may tell you they're the only person on campus who isn't doing well or is having this problem. I guarantee you they're
Not true.
wrong. I mean, it is, if you aren't struggling in some ways, then this education thing isn't working. But the thing is, you shouldn't struggle alone and feel as if this is your problem and not a problem to get assistance with.
Yeah.
So another question that came in is about the 4.5 CU limit, or credit unit limit for first semester students, and whether that's set in stone or can be waived, or should it be waived?
So that goes right to the question we were just talking about. The Faculty of Arts and Sciences actually believes this first semester is one of transition.
Yes.
So setting the limit at 4.5 CUs, that's 4.5 credits. At the same time, they will discover, because a great majority of our students do, that wonderful study habit from high school, which got them to Penn, so it is wonderful, needs a little tweaking when they get here to keep up with the pace of things or the amount of reading, or I really have to learn that from the problem set kind of questions, or how do you time manage, because it only looks like I've got 3 hours of class in this course, but then there's what's the professor's expectation for the hours outside of class, and how do you organize them? These are all the things that time that maybe the 5th course would have, taken up, but now they can use that time. Then there's the issue of they haven't lived with people from all over the world, perhaps, or they don't know what the etiquette of communal bathrooms is like, or they've never done their own laundry, or how do I make sure I get to the dining hall and get food on time? I mean, that's normal things they have to get used to dealing with when they get here. And I can tell you the number of interesting stories students tell me where I thought, I wouldn't have thought about that. Of course you have to get used to doing that because they never did it before. It is a time of adjustment. There's some extra time built in. And I never say anything set in stone, but you'd have to make a real good argument to say that you don't need that.
Yeah. Here's a story. One of the students on my undergraduate dean's advisory board, who I really like, nice young man, I like them all. I was meeting with them one night at the beginning of his first year here, a couple of years ago. And he said to me quite earnestly, this is the first semester, you know, I really don't believe that the college should limit us to 4.5 course units in our first semester. I know how much I can handle.
Mm-hmm.
And I smiled and said, well, I'm sorry, I can't change that. His second semester, he said, you know what? I'm really glad I only had 4.5 course units my first semester. And now, that may not be true for everybody, but it certainly was true in this case.
So we've had a few questions come in that are more nuts and bolts like. One of them is, I know my daughter put her courses in the cart, but I don't know if the order went through. So is there a way to confirm that the student has pre-registered? And I think that there are a couple of different things in this question. One is, within the advanced registration system, there are a couple of different screens, which the students are probably familiar with, and if they're confused about them, their peer advisors
Yes.
are probably the best resource to go to. One is the course cart, where you select courses you think you're interested in, and they're sort of in a column up and down.
It's like a shopping online
It's like
cart,
a shopping
really.
cart online.
Not
yeah.
that we're going to use a consumer metaphor,
But I gotta tell you,
we are.
That's what it looks like. It's
and
what
then
it looks like.
there is a screen called a mock schedule where you can migrate those into a grid for the week, and you can visualize them so that you don't have any overlaps, because you can't be in two classes at the same time. And once you've decided on what you really want, and your advisor has talked with you and released your holds, then you can go to what's called the course cart and
No.
select courses and migrate them? No, I thought you can migrate them to
You
the
go to the
registration
course
screen.
registration system.
But I think there is a...
But
well,
it tells
anyway.
you how
There's
to
a
do
feature,
this.
yeah.
It basically tells you
Mhm.
how to take what you've decided upon and
Right.
put it in this registration
Yeah.
system. The tricky thing, and I think this does confuse people, there's
Yeah.
no submit button.
Right.
So once you've got the courses all lined up that you want on this course registration page, you're done.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way I say it to my advisees is, once you put your courses in the registration page, they're going to stare back at you for the rest of this week, and it's good, because if you make a change, you want to reprioritize them, or you find some other course you like better, you can change it around all the way up to the end of advanced registration, at which point they will not be visible anymore until about a week, 10 days later, when people will find out which of their requests they receive.
And do remember that during the period of advanced registration, it doesn't matter when during that period you put in your courses. Your chance of getting a given course at a given time slot is the same if you did it last week as it would be if you did it at 11:59 this Friday.
Although it's going to be really slow at 11.
Yeah, never do any web-based thing at the last moment. I can tell you that from submitting grants at the last moment on the web.
Okay. And then another question we get just about every year: how long do you recommend between classes to make the transition from one class to another? I think it looks, it's a little nervous-making to students and family members to look at a schedule where you have a course from 9 to 10 and then one from 10 to 11. There's actually a 10-minute buffer built in. The one from 9 to 10 is only from 9 to 9:50. You can pretty much get anywhere on campus in 10 minutes. If you feel like you need more, then maybe you make a schedule that has more time. But if there are two courses that are critical to you to go to, you can probably make it. So those were two housekeeping questions.
Remember, nuts and bolts questions, they have a peer advisor,
Yeah.
Right.
they have a pre-major advisor, and if they want to, if they look on their Pen and Touch page, there is also a college contact, which is a member of the college office that they could contact with a question too. So there's at least 3 people that can help them with those nuts and bolts.
All right, here's one. Can students become involved in research in their first year and get grants and internships, or do they have to wait?
Eve, you want to?
Well, I guess I'll speak about my own experience with undergrads. I have my last book. I could not have done my last book without the help of two undergrad research assistants who were paid out of my research funding or through work study. And I believe that one of them I took on because he had such fierce language skills, and I needed someone to be able to translate some documents, some very important documents to my book that were in Italian, which is not one of the languages that I have. And I took him on between his freshman year and his sophomore year. And I think that was a better time to do it because he had taken one of my classes. He was very sure what he wanted his major to be in, and it was a major that he would work with me in. And I think, and remember, I'm in the humanities.
Right.
I don't know about the sciences, and well, Paul can speak to that. I wouldn't ask a student to help me during their freshman year. I just think that's a year where you're too busy trying to figure things out and get to know the campus. But that summer in between, I'm always eager to take on students. And as they move on, sometimes we can provide very interesting summer work for the undergrads, and we pay better than McDonald's. So but I always try to leave my students their freshman year to sort of figure out where they want to invest in.
I'm basically on board with that too. As a science prof, I have had many students do research with me. I certainly don't recommend having a student try to do any research in their first semester of their first year. Sometimes I'll bring one on in the second semester, but for very limited hours, and often that can be in the capacity of, if it's a work study student, they're going to have to work anyway, and this makes a perfect alignment with what they're interested in. They're getting paid for that. Usually I limit any first year students who work with me to 10 hours a week. I don't let them go any higher than that. What I will say is that, unlike the great small liberal arts colleges, what students get who come to the College of Arts and Sciences at Penn is this terrific opportunity to do research with people like Eve and other people right around the university and indeed in the hospital here and so forth. Right. So this is a wonderful opportunity, and it's distinctive aspect of the education that we offer. And we offer it in various ways, and if students are interested in it, the time to start looking actively is in that second semester of the first year. And indeed, we kind of roll out some opportunities in that second semester. Our Center for Undergraduate Research and Fellowships, called CURF, has various programs, one of which is PERM. We're big on acronyms here. The Program in Undergraduate Research Mentorship, or something like that.
And undergraduate research mentor.
Yeah, PERM. Anyway, PERM has faculty sign up. I don't know if you've done it, Eve. I've signed up for PERM projects.
I've signed up in the past
Yeah.
for a certain honors
Yeah.
trajectory.
Right.
And one of my students just graduated
Right.
with that.
And I have a student who's now working as a technician in my lab for 1 year before she goes off to MD PhD program. And in the spring of her first year here, I had a PERM project which I'd put in through PERM, and she came and interviewed and joined my lab at the end of that spring. And so those PERM projects are up on the website in, I think, February of each year, and it's a wonderful opportunity. And we usually get the word out for faculty who are teaching courses to make announcements that, the PERM rollout and that has started, and there are other such things. And even leaving aside those formally arranged opportunities, if a student's interested in research in that, sometime in that first year, even in the first semester, if your student is taking a course, suppose you talk with your student by phone and they say, "Oh, wow, I am really enjoying this course in history." The thing to suggest to them or for them to think about is, go down to the room at the end of lecture and talk to the professor and ask the question that's in your mind. Yeah. Tell them you're interested. I'm telling you, they'll melt because what what professors love is genuine interest in what we're thinking about and trying to teach, and research opportunities emerge from that. That they emerge from genuine expressions of interest and dialogue with professors.
And even if the student is not doing a research project or working on research for somebody in that first or even second year, this is a research university. It's all around them.
Yeah,
What they
yeah.
have in the classroom is they're learning research skills. They may not actually be totally conscious of this, but they're actually getting skills which they can offer to somebody else when they get into the position of wanting to compete maybe outside of here
Yeah,
for an
yeah.
internship or a research
right.
position someplace else. So it is, research takes many, many shapes and forms, but
Yes,
you
it
have
does.
to learn how to do something to be of
Yeah.
value to doing it. And it's often an apprenticeship kind of situation anyway. So most people, and our partners in KERF are phenomenal at helping the student to understand those kinds of things.
Can each of you flesh out a little bit what research might look like in the humanities, social sciences, and people sometimes assume they know what research looks like in the
Right.
lab, but
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
details
That's
help.
such a good question.
know?
That's great.
That's
Yeah.
such a good question. So I will just relate how I learned that Daniel was going to be such a great research assistant for me. I won't do his last name, but he came to my office hours. And I teach courses on the Middle East, but he came to my office hours and he wanted to explore something about Italians in Egypt, and we began to talk about it, and we started to think about it, and I was so enjoying the ping-ponging back and forth with him, and then he asked me, this was a miracle, he asked me, what am I working on? And it's always, professors love to go into that, and we started talking about it, and I was working on something that required someone to be able to translate Italian, but these were hard texts. These were all Vatican texts, and these were not easy. And he and I we would work out a research schedule where I would say, this is what I'm looking for. What is the question? I have ideas about how to read these things and get to the question, but maybe you have some ideas about how to read through the same material and get to some of the questions that I'm asking. And maybe as you're reading this, since you know what my basic project is, you have questions that I didn't think of that should be thrown in here. And I would say that our partnership, and I would call it a partnership, lasted for 2 years.
Is.
And it opened up a whole new chapter in my book that wouldn't have been there. And in my acknowledgments, it says that the chapter 4 of this book could never have been done without this student. So that was the nature of our research, really looking at historians were always, looking for primary documents and how do we read a primary document. And Daniel became a really good history major after
And those
that.
primary documents could be artworks, they could be
That's
artifacts in a
right.
museum, they could
Absolutely.
be...
Absolutely. I'm a cultural historian, so I've had other students help me with art and but those have tended to be graduate students.
But we also
Yeah.
have museums all over
That's
the city, and I'm a medical historian, and surgical instruments are actually an object that has
Yeah.
been studied by several of my students to understand how things were going. We have a rare book room in this library, which is just phenomenal, and I've had students do all kinds of interesting research with the object, which is the book. Now,
Right.
and we have an archaeology museum, and so there's from the vantage point of a person like me who crosses between humanities and social sciences, there's lots of different ways. We also have some really sophisticated numbers crunchers. And these people that's a really valuable form of research, learning how to look at large bodies of data and analyze it and really know what's an important pattern and what's just noise in the numbers. And political scientists and economists and sociologists and some of my colleagues over in public health and the medical school, great work that they've been doing, and many of them have taken on undergraduates as part of their teams.
I think I'm probably a more traditional or typical description of what research would be for those of you thinking about the sciences. I run a research lab in the biology department, and we work with microorganisms, and we ask questions about genetics and evolution and mutation. And so for me, working with students, it's often a multi-year journey, as Eve has described. They often come to me from my intro classes that I've taken or taught or from perm projects that I've posted, and it's a long process. A student is not going to come in and have that brilliant idea that turns out to be their senior project in their first year. Instead, they come in and they become incorporated in the lab, and they work with me and my students, my postdocs, to do experiments. And then, as the student I was describing, Arlene, who just graduated, in her fourth year, she was doing a completely independent project and met with me once a week, like my graduate students, one-on-one, to talk about that work. And she was working at the level of a graduate student, and wrote a very fine honors thesis. And so it's a long project. There's a lot that goes into it. And so there's that element of intellectual engagement. All of my undergraduates, typically a lab like mine, will have a weekly lab meeting. And what I tell students who join the lab is, when you come to those lab meetings, it's going to be as though everybody's speaking a language you don't understand.
Right, yeah.
And you will come to the lab meeting and you will listen and you will take notes and you may nod as though you understand. But after a few weeks, all of a sudden you will start to understand what we're talking about and to speak that language. And so it takes that kind of persistence. But it's a wonderful part of what we do here. In many ways, it's the most gratifying part. Some of the happiest moments of the year for me are when I meet the parents, if I haven't already met them, of my research students at graduation, and we talk about the students' work.
So we've had a couple of questions come in, shifting gears,
Mhm.
about work study, about how to find work study jobs, whether one is on financial aid or not, and finding ways to connect it with opportunities that students are interested in, whether there's a kind of a volunteer position with in the neighborhood, or whether it's in a lab. So I think work study is a part of a lot of students' lives, so it's important to think about that and finding those opportunities. Anyone want to?
Well, we have resources. There is a website which is full of work study jobs. Now, not all work study jobs get posted there, so you can also go talk to somebody and see if work study is available. Work study traditionally is a federally funded program. There is some Penn-funded work study, but again, you have to ask. I also urge students to realize that every semester is different, and so that the demands on them may be different. And so maybe their work study job in one semester is that they are checking books in at the library, or they're sitting at the desk in a college house checking people in and out. So there's downtime and they can maybe get a little studying done on the side, because they have such other demands on them that semester and they really need that kind of a job. Or maybe it's a semester where they really want to get into this research and they find an opportunity in somebody's lab. It is work study, and all the pieces fall in place. But what about the semester? And I have two students like this last year where they really wanted to do a certain kind of a research, but there was no money available by those researchers. So they could do so many hours of what you might call volunteer effort, but we still had to find something for them to do to make the work study money, because it was part of their
Package.
budget for living here at Penn.
Right.
And both of them found very interesting jobs. One was working in the sports arena, doing, a part of the campus had never been on before, really liked it. They needed somebody to check equipment in, that kind of a stuff. Another student wound up working in an office in the medical school, what they thought was just office work, and actually that's turned out to be where the student is going to be doing epidemiological research this year. So you don't know. These are various kinds of opportunities, and the thing is you just have to get yourself together, get your resume together, and you ask questions and you knock on doors.
I have a question for you, Janet.
Sure.
It's also possible for faculty to post a work study job?
Absolutely.
Isn't it? So there's
You can
a
put
way
it
to
on
do
that website,
That's right.
or
I've done
yes,
that. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone can, but just know from experience, a lot of jobs don't ever quite get there.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Janet had mentioned the undergraduate I think Eve, you mentioned undergraduate coordinators in the
Yeah.
departments. And this is a great place for students to go. For instance, in my department, the biology department, our undergraduate coordinator, AJ, knows what's going on in all of the labs and
Right.
all in the department. And so you can go in as a student and ask AJ, hey, do you know of anybody who's looking to hire an undergraduate in a work-study position or a non-work study hourly position? And he may well know of something. And similarly for other departments, that can be a good resource.
And don't discount your friends.
Yeah.
So, because
That's right.
Yeah.
students are past,
That's right.
one student wants to leave a lab, and when they know they're going to leave it, they'll pass
Yeah,
the job
yeah.
on to someone they
Yeah.
know.
That's right.
So your network of people.
Yeah. A key thing in all of this is as a student, your student shouldn't be passive about this. This is a place that is full of opportunities, but on the other hand, they kind of don't come up and grab you, the opportunities. You need to go out there, talk to people, talk to your professors, look at the website, and if you do, there are many, many things you can do. I want to just return to the subject of research just briefly. I want to do this because Janet, I believe, said there are many different ways in which one could do research at a place like this. And my own background is in the performing arts. I did a music degree, and broadly considered, creative work is also research. And so research is not just scholarship in the humanities, scholarship or research in the sciences. Research is also creative work. There are ways in which you can become engaged in creative work in the Kelly Writers House, for
Absolutely.
example.
The music department
The
has
music
all kinds.
department,
Theater arts.
we think of, we in the college think of research with a very, very broad brush.
Well, one that just came in was about sports, how much time there is for students to play sports. And I think this person was talking about on a university team, although I guess there's also intramural club sports
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
And I think that comes back to the, time management and balance question. I mean, students are going to have lots of commitments. Student athletes, certainly, if they're on a team, that's a big commitment with a practice schedule. Students who are working work study, students who are committed to doing volunteer work, students who are involved in any number of student organizations. All of these take time, and they're part of college, but they're also, when things pull at you and you don't have a way to handle them, they can undermine the academics. So so it's a good question. Is there enough time?
I will say that those athletes, the student athletes who are on Penn's teams, not the intramural, but the student athletes are well suited they tend to bring to professors their schedule ahead of time.
Yes, that's
And
been
I
my
think
experience.
this is something
Yeah.
that the coaches encourage, to make sure that no big game is going to be lost because of some exam
yeah.
or something like that. And so my experience with Penn Athletics is that they are very good at encouraging the students, if not requiring the students, to bring their schedule and let us know when they just cannot be in class,
Yeah.
or they just cannot do something because there's a tournament or something like that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
been my experience.
That's true. And I've had, I think, 4 or 5 very dedicated athletes working in my lab over the years. And I have found them to be, the ones I've had, really excellent managers of time. It's almost
They've
like
always
they're
had to
so
be that
busy
way
they
their
have to
lives.
do
Yes,
it that
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But one thing you parents can help us with your student, which is to make sure that your student knows that academic advising comes from the college office, that's where they should go for academic advising. There is, I think, an understandable tendency on the part of athletes who may have been speaking to people at the university from way before they made the decision to come here, to think that they can get all their advice from athletics. And the academic side of advising, that's why we have a college office, that's why we have specialists in academic advising. So they should make sure that they come see us as well.
because we even have people who were student athletes
Yeah,
who
they're-
now work in the college office. So it's not as if
Yeah.
we don't understand the experience and aren't appreciative of it. And we probably more than anyone else recognize how delicate is the balance that you
Yeah.
have to work out every
Right.
semester. And
That's
we're here to support you work out the balance, but it's got to be a balance because you cannot be an athlete without being a student. That's just a vital.
And one question that came in from a number of folks is, will I get a copy of my child's grades? How can I keep track of how they're doing academically?
That depends. That depends on whether they allow you to get a copy of their grades. It's up to your student, and they can approve that or not. That's up to them.
And in the College of Arts and Sciences, you received a mailing which is about the website, which is for parents. And if this question about grades is there, you should read over that section, and you should recognize that the federal government and Penn, in compliance with the federal government, treats each one of our students as an adult. And that adult has the ability to waive their privacy rights to their academics or to waive their privacy rights about their financial information.
Right.
I can tell you from an observer of this for many years, the vast majority of students say no, they're not going to waive their privacy rights about academics, but yes, they will be more than happy to share financial information with you.
I wonder
So
why.
I'm just saying, this is clearly a conversation worth having with your, because there are students, but this is your child. So
Yeah.
you need to work out this new relationship with this person who the federal government and the university are going to treat as an adult.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my colleagues to the right would agree with me that as parents of college-age children, we wanted to know how they were doing. We sure did. And in the case of our one child that's gone through college, we did know. But it was up to her.
Yeah.
It was up to her.
Yeah, it was up to, no
Yeah.
question about it.
Yeah.
Legally up to her.
My son told me, and my husband, but I'll be honest with you, I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Honestly, I just want to bring up a slightly different, because there's a broader question here about parental participation
Yes.
in this
Yes,
stage
yes.
of our children's almost adults' educational journey. I teach a very controversial subject. I teach modern Middle East studies, and I teach the Arab-Israeli conflict and all kinds of fun things like that I love and that I try to make my students love. But sometimes my students are coming with all kinds of experiences, like my grandfather would be so angry with you, Dr. Trout Powell, or, this is not how I was brought up, this is not what I learned in high school, and my whole point is, exactly, this is not what you learned in high school, this is not what you heard necessarily, but bring what you heard. Bring the experience that you had, bring all that in here, so that, because what we're all trying to do is create a space for discussion. But I have had some students whose parents really wanted to talk to me, and I invited them to the class.
Wow. Yeah.
And now, luckily, some of them lived really far away, but some of them were very close by, or family day or family weekend would come. And that was great. And they would come and all of a sudden they'd look at this room, they hadn't imagined who the other students would be, who I would be, and, how their student felt in the mix. So that's a nice reason to come visit,
Yeah,
know,
it sure
and,
is.
Absolutely.
and sort of it breaks down some of the walls, and you get to really, it brings home what your kid is studying, and I think it makes you feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
But also, I think that the parents on this panel, including Rebecca, someone that you love becoming an independent human being is an important part of why you became a parent. That doesn't make it always easy or always pain-free or,
No.
But I think of these silly things like the signing the waivers on the privacy rights and wanting to see grades. They're just little moments in this journey, and it's how you navigate that moment. And you should talk. I always think a three-way conversation is a much better thing between the student and the people in their lives that care about them and the people at the university that do. That's what we want to be.
We're almost out of time. Question, is there a summer assignment other than reading the summer reading book, which is Weapons of Math Destruction by Kathy O'Neill? Do the students have to do anything else?
Well, they gotta pre-register for their courses.
No,
They gotta
related
pack
to
up all that stuff to get it in this little room when they
Yeah.
get here. There's a
Well,
little.
yeah, okay, that's broader. I think there's an essay that is supposed to be submitted through Canvas.
Which is
regarding-
part of the reading
Right,
project.
and they'll have a morning session with faculty,
Yeah.
and then afternoon discussion sections. It's on Friday, August 23rd.
Yeah, and those discussion sections are really fun. It's really fun to get together with an incoming group of new students and talk about the book of the year.
And
It
I
really is.
had a conversation with one of my incoming first-year students, and he was really excited by this book because he's very interested in the politics of data and survey research, and in this age of controversies regarding Facebook and elections and all kinds of things. This is a very topical book
Sure
that they
is.
should be interested in. And what should people do if they have more questions? Because we're almost out of time here. We'll answer all the questions we didn't get to
Yeah.
that came in
Yeah.
by email. And you can always pick up the phone and call the college office.
Sure can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
215-898-6341.
And
Yeah.
don't hesitate to ask your child.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a question, they should know you have a question.
Yeah.
Right.
So we've reached the end of our hour. Thank you for joining us. We hope we've provided some useful answers and perhaps some interesting ones. And reminder, advance registration ends 11:59 on Friday night, this Friday night, June 19th.
July.
July 19th, thank you.
So that's T minus how many days? Or
Yeah. And so if your student has not gone through Compass and spoken with their pre-major advisor, good idea to give them a prod. Better do that, better get in. And then the other thing to remind you of is Family Weekend, November 1st to 3rd. We'd love to see you here, but if you can't be here, we'll do another webcast, and you can see us again then.
And
Thanks
ask,
very much.
and ask questions then, too.
Yeah. Thanks very much.